Let me start that. That works. So today I want to speak a little bit about walking meditation, um, and to talk about it not as a kind of supplement to mindfulness practices like other practices like sitting meditation, but as its own practice, a standalone practice. So after a few comments about walking meditation, we'll do a little practice of walking together. Sometimes, as I've experienced it anyway, on when I attend my own retreats, walking meditation is sometimes used almost like a break to break up periods of sitting meditation, which can be useful and kind of on a practical level. If you're sitting for a long time, you could sit and walk and then come back to sitting. And by doing that, you can really extend your practice time. We do that on our own weekend mindfulness retreats at some point. Um, but a walking meditation is also a full meditation in its own right. In the core teachings of mindfulness that come from the Satipatthana Sutra, a Buddhist text known in English as the Discourse on the Foundations of Mindfulness, lays out the whole thing. This foundational text describes that specific bodily stances are used for mindfulness practices throughout walking, the stance of walking, of standing, of sitting, of lying down. Those are kind of the four body postures. And we're always saying mindfulness like it's just all in the head, mindfulness, but it's a body practice as well. And we're encouraged to maintain awareness in all those different postures. And our ability just to know the body in one of these four postures, to know what our body is doing in a sense, walking, standing, sitting, lying down, that sense that we have to be able to do that is called proprioceptive awareness, which I've mentioned before. It's the awareness of a felt sense of the body and the positioning of the body without even having to look at it. It's the sense that enables us to kind of point to the back of our head, even though we can't see it. We can orient and sense that. Or if our eyes are closed, we still kind of know where the body is in real time. And that helps us to establish present moment awareness in the here and now. Bhikkhu Analayo, a contemporary scholar and monk, and really, I think anyway, one of the most careful interpreters of the early Buddhist discourses, he emphasizes that mindfulness begins with the body and begins with the body as it is actually lived out, not the body as an object of thought that we're thinking about our body. Um, and so, regarding walking meditation, Analayo says, when walking, one knows that I am walking. It's as simple as that. But, Buddhism is not the only expression of this kind of present moment, non judgmental awareness. And it's not the only tradition that talks about walking meditation. It's not just described in the Buddhist tradition. Teaching on walking meditation, for example, is also affirmed in Christian contemplative practices. The renowned teacher of Christian meditation, James Finley, who is now a psychologist but was once a monk and a student of Thomas Merton, he says in his book, The Contemplative Heart, I experienced in the slow, mindful walking a rudimentary form of contemplation in action. In walking, he says, I discovered a way to allow the deep stillness fostered in sitting meditation to flow out unbroken and uninterrupted into bodily movement. The term for walking meditation in the Chinese language is qin hin. And if we look at the root of that word, qin hin, it helps, I think, describe the practice of walking meditation. Literally, that translation of that word means stringing or threading, as in going through like the thread in a loom, back and forth and back and forth. And it also suggests a kind of sewing or holding things together, as the ancient teachings on mindfulness do for our lives. They stitch together our awareness, and so that we can be present in our lives in a particular way. So, in this walking meditation, we're not just walking back and forth, but we're walking as if threading the needle through a loom. And in this threading helps us become more aware of something in us and our relationship to all things. It's kind of connecting. The thread that runs through present moment awareness helps us connect and hold things together, resulting in a kind of insight into how we are to live our lives. Perhaps the things that need holding together are the various stressors in our lives, the worry and anxiety we might be experiencing, the diagnosis we might be carrying, the fractures in our relationships, whether very intimate relationships or business relationships or just casual relating to others. Or perhaps it's our grief that wishes to be connected, stitched together in a way that integrates the loss. Maybe it's the experiences of being separated by our differences, be they economic, racial, or political, and hope that whatever divides us might be stitched together in a kind of wholeness and unity. Sometimes, for some of us, it may seem that life is kind of falling apart. And so here's a practice that, in the very physical nature of it, helps us to sew things together as we walk back and forth. And in that threading, we might find a way to hold things as they are in this moment, so that we might be better able to inhabit this moment. The connective tissue in every experience and moment in our lives, by seeing this thread of oneness in all things and in all people. The Buddhist scholar I mentioned earlier, Bhikkhu Analayo, notes that walking meditation makes impermanence directly observable. Each step arises and passes away, offering a very clear experiential entry point into insight rather than a conceptual reflection on it. He goes on, if mindfulness only functions when we're seated, quiet, and protected, then mindfulness has not yet fully met life. So in the practice of walking meditation, it's best to keep it simple, avoiding turning it into some kind of rigid technique that we have to, sometimes you see people on retreats and it's like very controlled. And the purpose is not to control the body, but to know it better. So when we practice walking meditation, we're not trying to perfect our steps in any particular way. Sometimes walking slowly supports awareness. Sometimes natural walking is more effective. As you just go to get the mail, you could walk with intention. What matters is not really the form, but the quality of attention. Finally, I would say that the world-renowned Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh instilled in his community the value of walking, and it is still today one of their primary meditative practices. In his book, How to Focus, Nhat Hanh speaks about walking as a spiritual discipline and a way to think globally. He says, when we see things globally, we avoid many mistakes and we have a profound view of happiness and life. The spot you are standing on includes the whole earth. When you practice walking meditation, you realize that with each step you take, you are touching the whole earth. When you touch one thing with deep awareness, you touch everything. And then he ends with, walk as though you are kissing the earth. So let's do so. Let's practice together, allowing mindfulness to inform not only how we walk, but how we live. So let me just set it up. If you're not familiar with walking meditation, I'll just give you a few guidelines about it, and then we'll sit briefly so that we can kind of settle down, and then I'll invite us to walking. And so um, usually this is done in just kind of a back and forth. You find a lane and of 10 or 12 feet or so, and you just walk for a little bit if you have the room to do that. And when you reach the end of the lane, you just pause and turn around and walk back and get to the other end and pause and turn around and walk back. And that's it. Some people like to go in a circle. If you want to kind of circle your coffee table or something, you could do that as well. Um, but it begins by actually us just standing still, and I'll guide us when we get to that point, and just feel your feet planted on the ground. And you check in with your posture as we do, just as we the same as we do in sitting meditation, of that sense of being upright, and that you're touching the earth with the bottom of the feet. And this is also good to use our feet when we can to practice, because the soles of the feet contain more sweat glands and sensory nerve endings per square centimeter than any other part of the body. So there's a lot of information coming to us through the bottoms of our feet. It makes for a very sensitive surface, um, and that we can take in information by that. I also want to say that you can practice walking meditation even if you have like foot issues, or you have kind of like neuropathy, or even if you have like a prosthetic, that you can still attempt walking meditation. Then the conditions like that might limit receiving some of the sensations in the foot, or might challenge the balance, but you can still notice the other sensations experienced by just simply being upright and moving. And if you're not able to walk at all, then just notice what it's like to see people or to sense people walking while you're remaining seated or lying down. So we get asked a lot on the retreat, like, what about posture? It's an upright posture. And people want to know, well, what do you do with your hands? You can just let the hands be, just straight out beside the body, the palms facing the side body. Or some people like to take hold of the one wrist or the other behind the back, or some interlace the fingers in front of the chest, or make that kind of traditional prayer posture by taking the palms together with the fingers pointing up. And then we cast our gaze a few feet out in front of us, and then we begin just walking slowly and noticing the sensations of lifting the left foot, placing it down, and shifting of the weight, and lifting the right foot and placing it down. Okay, so let's come to standing if you're able to, and just begin by, I don't want to get too far away from my microphone right away, but let's just begin by taking a standing position and establishing ourselves, and decide if you're going to kind of go back and forth in a lane, or whether you're going to make a little loop around. And if you only have, 5 feet in front of you in the space that you're in, then just make that the lane back and forth. And we're not careful not to be rushing like we're trying to get somewhere. There's nowhere to get to. So establishing yourself now in a standing position, and really, if you're in a place where you can kick off your shoes, that's a bonus. In stocking feet or in barefoot, so that you can really feel the sensations of walking on the bottom of the feet. And then adjust the posture so that you're uh, relatively in alignment and relatively upright. And the head is level, but you can cast the eyes down just to quiet things a bit. And when you've tuned in and you have a sense of the body standing here, then, or sitting if you're not able to be standing, or lying back down, you can also do. But then just begin to move, nice and easy. There's no rush. There's no arriving at some end point. And we'll move back and forth for a time, and then I'll bring us back uh, before the end of our time together by ringing the bell, just to call you back to your original position of seated. And, you know, you can experiment with the speed at which you're walking. It's nice to slow things down so you have the opportunity to notice, but you don't have to be, you know, overly slow. Find a cadence that works for you. All right, let's make our way back to a seated position. And just pausing in stillness just for a couple of moments till we hear the sound of the bell. Here's a piece of writing by Rob Bell. Walk, don't run. That's it. Walk, don't run. Slow down. Breathe deeply. And open your eyes because there's a whole world right here within this one. The bush doesn't suddenly catch on fire. It's been burning the whole time. Moses is simply moving slowly enough to see it. And when he does, he takes off his sandals. Not because the ground has suddenly become holy, but because he's just now becoming aware that the ground has been holy the whole time. Efficiency is not the highest goal for your life. Neither is busyness, or how many things you can get done in one day, or speed, or even success. But walking, which leads to seeing, now that's something. That's the invitation for every one of us today and every day in every conversation, interaction, event, and moment to walk, not run. And in doing so, to see a whole world right here within this one. So opening the eyes if the eyes have been closed, engaging with the screen. We have a few minutes for comments or questions. Joan, I saw that you posted that you're recuperating from a knee replacement surgery last week. I wish you good luck with that. And I'm glad you were able to participate even without walking, which is definitely an option. You know, we can, not all of us can walk, or at certain times we can't. So the main practice there is about just being aware of the body in different postures. So you could also just practice, uh, reclining back and being aware of the body in that position. Good. I'm glad it was good for you today as well, Joan. Any other comments or questions that you want to? You can unmute yourselves easily enough, or wave, and I'll help you.
Oh, just a reminder to stop recording, Mark.
Oh, right. Thank you.
No problem.